Midnight. A biker steps out for a smoke and finds a teenage girl sleeping behind the clubhouse. But when she says her last name, every man there goes silent. What secret could be buried deep enough to make outlaws tremble? Torch stepped outside, helmet still under his arm, craving a smoke more out of habit than need. The Black Crow's party had died down inside, music fading to the low hum of a jukebox and half-drunken laughter. He needed quiet. He lit up, the flame briefly revealing the web of scars along his knuckles. When the wind shifted, he caught a faint sound, a shuffle quick and too light to belong to a grown man. He turned toward the dumpsters behind the garage. A corner of blue tarp moved, but when he kicked aside the trash bin and pulled the tarp back, every instinct in him locked into place. Beneath the cover was a girl, thin, hollow-eyed, maybe 15. Her eyes squinting against the sudden brightness like someone who'd learned to expect the worst from every intrusion. "Hey!" Torch said softly, hands up, like talking down a skittish cat. "You alive?" She nodded, clutching a backpack to her chest. "I didn't take anything," she whispered. "I just needed somewhere to sleep." Torch's throat tightened. He wasn't good with scared kids. He was good with engines, fights, and men who followed the rules of the road. But the look in her eyes, the mix of apology and defiance, hit somewhere he hadn't felt in years. "Come on." He extended a hand. "Ain't safe back here." She hesitated, then let him help her up. Inside, warmth hit her like a wave. Heads turned immediately. The laughter stopped. Every patched vest turned toward the tiny figure wrapped in Torch's jacket. "She yours, Torch?" someone called out. "Picked her up behind the dumpster," he said. "She's half frozen." A few men shifted, exhaling smoke-laden laughs that died too quickly. But Grizz, the club president, pushed away from the bar. His gray beard caught the neon light, eyes heavy with authority. "Easy, everyone. Kid's scared. Get her some water." Eliza sat stiff as Rainey poured her water. The men watched from the corners. She took a sip, shoulders hunched, and whispered, "Thanks. What's your name?" Grizz asked. The girl met his gaze for the first time. "Eliza," she said. After a pause, she added, "Eliza Dane." Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone's beer bottle paused halfway to his lips. A low hum from the beer fridge filled the silence. Even the jukebox seemed to falter mid-song. Grizz went pale beneath the tattoos threading his neck. "Dane," Torch repeated. "As in Nathan Dane?" Eliza frowned. "That was my father's name." "You knew him?" Grizz sank onto a stool, face in his hands. Rainey's voice broke. "Where did you hear that name?" "My mom told me he rode with a group called the Black Crows," Eliza said quietly. "Said he disappeared before I was born." Torch's jaw tightened. Nate Dane, the man who had once been his brother, who had laughed louder than the engines they rode, who vanished the night everything went sideways. The club never spoke of him after that night. Grizz finally looked up. His voice was rough from years of whiskey and regret. "Who's your mother?" "Marla Jensen," the girl said. "She passed away last year." The name settled into the room like ash after a fire. Torch remembered Marla, too, brown hair, kind eyes, the reason Nate used to drive 30 miles out of his way. The reason he'd said he wanted out. Torch's vision blurred at the edges. 20 years collapsed into the space between heartbeats. She pulled a Polaroid from her backpack, Nate grinning at the clubhouse gates, wearing the same locket. She held it up. "I found this in my mom's things." The letter inside had this address written on it. Torch leaned forward. "You came looking for him?" She nodded. "I just wanted to know who he was. That's all." Silence spread through the men like smoke. The oldest among them couldn't meet each other's eyes. They already knew what the others were thinking. Grizz broke the silence. "You can stay here tonight," he said finally. "We'll figure out the rest in the morning." Torch handed her a blanket. She curled up on the couch. The room eventually emptied. though the tension lingered like smoke. Later, Torch sat by the window. Neon flickered red over her sleeping face. He thought of Nate again, the laughter, the arguments, the silence after the fallout in '99. He had never believed the stories about Nate's betrayal. Now, looking at Eliza, he knew there was more to it. "Kid," he whispered, voice barely audible. "What the hell have you walked into?" Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain and gasoline. Inside, the ghosts of the Black Crows stirred. And, somewhere deep in the walls of the clubhouse, the past began to wake up. The clubhouse wore its tension like a second skin the morning after Eliza arrived. Conversations stopped whenever Torch passed. The air carried a question no one dared voice aloud. What does her being here mean for us? Eliza sat at the end of the long wooden table in one of Torch's oversized hoodies. Her hair damp from a shower Rainey had insisted she take. Color had returned to her cheeks, though exhaustion still hollowed the space beneath her eyes. Grizz hovered near the coffee pot, pretending to read a parts invoice that had been on the counter for months. Nobody mentioned Nate Dane yet. Rainey broke the silence. "You need anything, sweetheart?" "Food." Eliza shook her head. "Just answers." Grizz flinched, his grip tightening around the coffee mug. The Prez's knuckles whitened. "Kid," Torch said carefully, "some truths are better pulled slow. You go yanking, you just tear what's left." Eliza looked at him with something between defiance and fatigue. "I didn't come for drama. I just want to know who my father really was." By afternoon, the storm rolling in off the highway had swallowed the sun. Rainey slipped into the vinyl room, a cramped space near the back where the club kept decades of old ledgers, photos, and relics gathering dust beside boxes of broken records. Only she ever came here now. The air was thick with dust and whiskey, decades compressed into a single breath. She turned on the flickering lamp and started digging. Old meeting logs filled a milk crate, their pages yellowed from cigarette smoke. She flipped through until one entry caught her eye. June 12, 1999, vote passed. Nate suspended pending inquiry. Signed by Grizz. The page beneath it had been torn clean out. Blood thrummed in her ears. "You buried something, old man," she whispered. In the drawer beneath the cabinet, she found more. A folded police report marked, "Missing Nathan Dane. Never filed." The bottom was smeared with grease, but Rainey could still read the notes. "Last seen on Route 219. Alone. Said he was meeting outsiders for a truce." She exhaled shakily. None of the club ever mentioned Nate riding solo that night. She almost didn't notice the notebook wedged behind the drawer. The cover was cracked leather, initials burned into the corner. ND inside on the first page, a single unfinished sentence. "If I don't make it back, tell her she was the reason I stayed out as long as I did." Rainey closed her eyes. Marla. Could only be Marla. Eliza's mother. Meanwhile, in the workshop, Eliza swept the floor without being asked. The men avoided her at first, then slowly began to nod her way. She asked questions about engines, about bikes, about freedom. She carried hunger in her questions, the kind that comes from growing up on scraps of truth. "Your old man would have liked that," Torch said, leaning on the doorway. She looked up from the broom. "You knew him well?" Torch hesitated. "Enough to know he didn't deserve what people say about him." "What do they say?" "That he betrayed the club, made deals behind Grizz's back. Some say he ran when it got bad. Others think someone made sure he didn't tell his side." Eliza absorbed that quietly, no fear in her eyes, resolve alone. "So which do you believe?" "I believe dead men can't defend themselves," he said, turning away. That night, while rain slapped against the windows, Torch found Rainey in the vinyl room, her face pale under the flickering bulb. The notebook lay open between them. "Where'd you get that?" he asked. "Hidden in the archives." She hesitated, then added, "He was planning to leave, Torch. Not betray us. Leave. Said he wanted to protect Marla and the baby. This notebook. He wrote about someone inside setting him up. Torch's breath caught. Inside the club? Rainey nodded. And whoever it was, they're still here. He sank into a chair, rubbing a hand down his face. 20 years of loyalty and silence weighed heavy. If Grizz knows, he knows something, she interrupted. But not everything, I think. Or maybe he's just been trying to forget. Footsteps echoed outside the room. They froze. Torch snapped the notebook shut. A shadow crossed the doorframe. Vance, one of the younger riders, pausing just a beat too long before walking off. Rainey shot Torch a look. They both knew trouble when they smelled it. Across the hall, Eliza wandered into the bar area, tracing her finger along the jagged carvings in the wood. Club names and dates gouged deep like scars. She stopped at one etched faintly near the bottom. N. Dane, 1998. She smiled sadly and whispered, "Guess we both made it here after all." Rainey entered quietly, the notebook now tucked under her jacket. "You look like him," she said softly. Eliza turned. "Everyone keeps saying that. But none of you talk about what happened." Rainey glanced toward the main hall, lowering her voice. "Some of us don't know what happened, and the ones who do might wish they didn't." "Then maybe it's time somebody finds out," Eliza said. Her tone carried a conviction that startled Rainey. Calm, but unyielding. In that instant, Rainey saw not a lost runaway, but a spark of the man the club had loved and lost. When midnight came, the storm broke in earnest. Thunder rattled the windows as Torch sat in the common room polishing a bike chain that didn't need polishing. He thought of Nate's grin, the night they drank under the same roof, promising that loyalty meant everything. Now loyalty felt like a blade sharp on both sides. Grizz emerged from his office, his expression guarded. "She's staying another couple nights," he said gruffly, "until we sort out what to do." Torch met his gaze. "You mean until you decide how much truth the club can handle?" Grizz's eyes hardened. "You don't understand what that truth cost." "Maybe it's time someone paid the rest," Torch said quietly. For a heartbeat, the two men stood against the hum of rain and neon. Then Grizz turned away, muttering, "You have no idea what you're digging up, brother." Torch watched him walk down the hall, that familiar heaviness settling between his ribs. He looked out the window toward the storm, then toward where Eliza slept, safe for now. Rainey's words echoed in his head. He was set up by one of their own. Outside, lightning split the sky over the motorcycles lined in the yard, each chrome tank catching a flash of white light. The ghosts were awake now, and Torch knew there was no burying them again. The storm had washed the dust from the highway, but inside the clubhouse, nothing felt clean. Breakfast passed in suffocating quiet. Men who once roared across state lines together now stared at their plates, pretending not to notice the girl sitting among them, the daughter of a ghost they'd buried years ago. Grizz barely looked at her. Torch saw it. The way the old man's eyes flicked up only when Eliza spoke, like every syllable reminded him of something he didn't want to remember. Rainey stood behind the bar cleaning glasses that were already spotless, her knuckles white around the rag. Eliza broke the quiet first. "Someone here knew my father," she said evenly. "Why won't anyone talk about it?" No one answered. Then Cross, one of the younger riders, ink still fresh on his forearm patch, snorted. "Maybe because dead men should stay dead. You come here, start stirring up club history. What did you expect? Sympathy?" Torch was up before he even realized it, his chair scraping across the floor. "Watch your mouth." Cross laughed, but it was brittle. "I'm just saying, she's got everyone on edge. Half the guys think she's a setup. Maybe she's wearing a wire." That landed hard. Eliza's expression didn't falter, but her hand tightened around her mug. Torch felt something flare in his chest, rage tangled with guilt until they were indistinguishable. "She's a kid," he said, stepping closer. She's Nate Dane's kid, Cross shot back. And last I checked, that name ain't one we toast to around here. Grizz slammed a hand on the counter. Enough. The room went still. His voice carried decades of command, roughened by regret. Everyone shut it. Torch, take her outside. The rest of you, get to work. Torch obeyed, steering Eliza toward the garage. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. She leaned against a bike lift, arms folded. I don't need protection, she said quietly. Torch studied her face, so much of Nate etched into every line. You do if you want to stay alive. I didn't come here to start fights. I came here for the truth. Yeah, he said. That's the problem. Later that day, Rainey met Torch behind the garage, the notebook clutched under her jacket. Her eyes were rimmed red, from sleepless nights spent drowning in memory. It's worse than I thought, she said. Nate wrote names, dates, maybe not directly, but code, coyote meeting, vote at midnight, the favor owed. It's all here. Torch frowned. A favor owed to who? Before she could answer, the garage door rattled open. Grizz stood there, face hard, rain dripping from his leather jacket. You two think I wouldn't notice you snooping through club logs? He said quietly. Rainey froze. Torch stepped forward, blocking her without thinking. You kept this buried, he said. A missing brother, a daughter wandering the streets looking for answers. Don't you think that counts as unfinished business? Grizz's gaze flicked to the notebook. You read it. Enough to know Nate didn't betray the crows, Torch said. He was set up. Something cracked behind Grizz's eyes. Fear, maybe. Recognition, definitely. His hand trembled as he reached for the notebook but stopped halfway. You think I don't live with that night every damn day? He rasped. You think I don't see him when I close my eyes? Then why hide it? Rainey demanded. Because the truth won't fix what it broke, Grizz said. Because if it gets out who did it, this club won't survive the fallout. Torch stepped closer, voice like gravel. Who was it, Grizz? Rain dripped from the roof, marking seconds that stretched like hours. Grizz finally exhaled, weary beyond years. Ask Vance, he muttered. He was just a prospect then, running errands for people who wanted the war to keep burning. Torch felt the pieces shift in his mind. Vance, ambitious, cunning, the kind of man who thrived in chaos. You really think he… I don't think, Grizz cut in. I know, but without proof this club eats itself alive. Leave it buried. Rainey clutched the notebook tighter. No, Nate deserves better. Grizz's voice dropped. And if you dig up ghosts, Rainey, they'll drag you down with them. That night, the clubhouse brimmed with unease. The younger riders whispered about loyalty. The old ones kept to their bottles. Torch sat near the window, sharpening a knife he didn't need sharpened. He could feel it, something building. The calm before betrayal. Eliza came over, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, grease under her nails. You were right, she said softly. It's not safe here, but I'm not leaving. Torch sighed. You got your father's stubborn streak. Good, she replied. Maybe he left me that for a reason. Nate's defiance lived in her eyes, sharpened by survival. You're walking into fire, kid. So are you, she said, eyes steady. Difference is, I have nothing left to lose. Torch couldn't argue. Later, Rainey met Eliza in the vinyl room, heart pounding. I found something else, she whispered. In the back of the notebook, a folded letter, creased, smudged, ancient. It read simply, if they come for me, it'll be V. Tell Grizz he was right to doubt him. And tell the kid I tried. Eliza traced the faded ink, her throat tight. He knew, she whispered. He knew they'd kill him. Rainey nodded, tears bright in the low light. This changes everything. Before they could say more, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Torch burst in, face grim. We've got a problem. Vance is calling for a vote. Says you two have been digging where you shouldn't. Rainey's blood ran cold. A vote on what? Whether the past stays buried, Torch said, or gets buried deeper. He looked at Eliza, her silence carrying more weight than any declaration could, the notebook clenched in her hands like a weapon of truth. Then let's not go down quiet, she said. Torch met Rainey's eyes. For once, the three of them were aligned, not by history or blood, but by purpose. Outside, engines began to roar. The club was gathering. And as the first rumble shook the walls, Torch realized the storm outside had been nothing compared to the one about to break inside. The rumble of engines shook the ground like thunder. One by one, the black crows rolled into the courtyard, headlights cutting through the mist. Torch stood by the window, hands clenched, watching ghosts of loyalty take their places in the rain. The vote Vance had called wasn't about the girl or the notebook anymore. It was about survival. Inside, the air was heavy with oil, fear, and old grudges. Rainey held the notebook tight against her chest. Eliza, standing beside her, looked calm in a way that made Torch uneasy. Teenagers didn't face rooms full of armed men with that kind of stillness. Torch caught her eye and gave the smallest nod. Whatever happened next, it would not be silence again. Grizz entered last, flanked by two senior riders. The room parted around him the way it always had. Even now, burdened by age and guilt, he carried authority like an invisible weapon. Vance was already waiting by the bar, leaning against it like the room belonged to him. "All right," Vance said, voice cutting through the tension. "Let's settle this. These three think digging up old business makes 'em saints. I say it makes 'em liabilities." He gestured toward Torch, Rainey, and Eliza. "We're supposed to be brothers, but brothers don't go rifling through closed graves." Torch stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Brothers also don't murder their own." "What did you just say?" Vance sneered. "You heard me." Torch looked around the clubhouse, meeting every pair of eyes. "Nate Dane didn't betray us. He went to end a war someone else wanted to keep burning, and that someone's standing right in front of me." Vance laughed, sharp and empty as breaking glass. "You're outta your mind, old man." Rainey opened the notebook and flipped it to the final page. She read aloud, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "If they come for me, it'll be V. Tell Grizz he was right to doubt him. And tell the kid I tried." Gasps rippled through the group. The younger riders looked at each other, confusion breaking into disbelief. "You're gonna trust scribbles in some wet journal?" Vance barked. "Anybody could have written that." Eliza stepped forward, eyes burning steady. "You want proof? How about this? My father's old locket was found in a police evidence bag after he went missing. Guess whose fingerprints were on it?" She tossed a photocopy across the table. Torch had pulled every string he could to get it from an old contact that morning. The page skidded across the wood, stopping at Grizz's hands. He picked it up and went still. Vance's smirk faltered just long enough for the truth to slip through the cracks. "You can't pin." "Shut up," Grizz said. His voice trembled, but not with doubt, with rage. "I gave you a patch, Vance. You were a kid looking for a family. You burned it all for power." "I did what had to be done," Vance snapped. Nate was soft. He was going to make peace with the very bastards who left Jockey bleeding on the road. He'd have sold us out. "He was trying to stop more blood," Rainey shouted. "Including yours." The room exploded into shouting. Torch lunged first, grabbing Vance by the cut, slamming him into the wall. Steel scraped metal as someone drew a knife. The club was seconds from tearing itself apart when Grizz fired his gun into the ceiling. The drywall rained dust over them. "Enough!" he barked. Vance froze. Grizz stepped forward, eyes burning beneath the weight of 2 decades of denial. "You think you protected the crows? You destroyed them. You made me live a lie." Vance's voice cracked into something almost pleading. We were brothers, Grizz. You said nothing back then because you knew I was right. Grizz raised the gun again, then lowered it slowly, disgust carving deep lines into his face. No, I said nothing because part of me was a coward. He looked at Torch. You were right to keep digging. Then, louder for everyone to hear, he declared, Nate Dane died an honest brother. Vance Rogers dies an outlaw and a traitor. Nobody breathed. Then Torch stepped aside, letting Grizz and Vance face each other alone. Just the sound of rain and a single gunshot that ended 20 years of lies. The clubhouse smelled of smoke by dawn. No one spoke. Vance's patch lay on the table, blood darkening the crow emblem into something unrecognizable. Grizz turned to the others, men who suddenly looked older than before. It's done, he said. But so are we. The crows can't pretend anymore. Some nodded. Others walked out into the pale morning, engines starting one by one. Eliza stood near the window, watching the horizon brighten. Torch approached quietly. You got your truth, he said. She smiled faintly. And you? You got your ghosts back. He nodded. Guess we both did. Rainey joined them, holding something small in her hands. The silver locket, repaired, its hinge cleaned and chain replaced. She placed it gently in Eliza's palm. He carried your picture before you even existed, she murmured. Now you can carry his. Inside the locket, two photos faced each other. Nate Dane, grinning with his brothers before everything burned down, and Eliza, taken that morning in the garage, her face lit by soft sunlight. Grizz came over, his voice rough but steady. Your old man was a good rider, and a better man than me. If you ever want to know what he built here, the roads will tell you. Eliza didn't answer. She just nodded, slipping the repaired locket over her neck. As she walked out with Torch and Rainey, the engines of the few remaining crows rumbled awake behind them. A last salute, not to the club they once were, but to the truth that had finally clawed its way into the light. Torch lit a cigarette and exhaled. So what now? Eliza looked toward the open road, the dawn painting everything gold. Now, she said softly, we ride forward. The wind caught her hair as she mounted the bike Rainey had tuned for her. The locket gleamed once more, whole again, proof that not every broken thing stays broken forever. And as the sun rose over the cracked asphalt, the legacy of Nate Dane finally breathed free. This story reminds us that the truth doesn't always heal, but it frees. Would you uncover the past if it meant breaking the only family you had left? Tell us what you do in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more untold stories that stay with you long after the screen fades. See you in the next video.